Before we get going into your Hockey IQ podcast episode, I want to thank our sponsor, Rapid Shot. Rapid Shot is the smart shooting lane. It's like a batting cage for hockey players. Very cool. Tracks your shot in three ways: accuracy, shot speed, and reaction time. Easy to use. Actually, I used it when I played and was growing up. Very easy. Simply scan your phone in, select your settings, and start shooting. You can see your stats on the app and online. You can check them out at rapidshot.com. Great small business. I actually grew up with one of the owner's sons and have played with all the family members by now, just in local pickups here in Ohio. Very cool local business. Awesome product. I love it. I know quite a few NHLers have them in their homes. A lot of D1 programs have it at their rinks. So you have to check this out. Rapidshot.com. Check it out. Rapid Shot, thank you so much for sponsoring our podcast. On the podcast today, we have Domenic Pittis. Did I pronounce that properly?
You did, absolutely.
Awesome. Give us maybe a 30-second background. I mean, you had 19 years of pro playing experience, so it wasn't that short of a journey. But if you had to compress that down a little bit, I mean, you're leading scorer in the AHL, champion in Switzerland, Champions Hockey League, so King of the Hill. Did some coaching with Stockton and the pros, and now you're at the prep school in California. It's been quite the journey.
Yeah, no, it has. I played major junior. I grew up in Calgary, played major junior in Lethbridge, and then played, half my pro career. I was drafted by Pittsburgh, and half my career in North America, bounced around in the minors, mostly played a little bit in Edmonton, and then, transitioned over to Europe and Switzerland for 9 years, finished at the end of my career, ended up playing for Bob Hartley and was able to get, on his staff in Calgary, and was in that organization for 8 years. And then, with that, after a couple of years up in Calgary, was, on the bench in Stockton, like you had mentioned, and then had this opportunity to be a hockey director at a prep school in Stockton, private Catholic school in Stockton, St. Mary's. And so, it's been a journey, that's for sure.
So I've always said that everyone's best playing time, or like the time that they are best at hockey, is like that 1 to 3 years after they stop playing. Now, maybe not for you because you played quite a while, but like it's that 1 to 3 years where you're suddenly compiling all of this information, whether it be technique, tactics, etc. But you're also kind of in that prime physicality, especially for those that finish after high school or after college. I'm curious how that evolution was for you. Maybe not so when you officially became a coach, but as you became the older statesman on the team, having to go back and help out these younger folks, and maybe how that affected your game.
Yeah. And it was, I was I'm an emotional guy and played with a lot of emotion. And that was a big part of trying to figure out as a hockey player how to control that. And so, right around, I'd say probably in my early 30s, I started to figure out the strength and conditioning side, the reel in the emotional side as well, and that, and then also understanding where you fit in on a team, and as you say, being able to be a leader in the dressing room or on the ice, and that it wasn't always necessarily what you said, but it was more so, at least in my view of leadership, is how you, the day-to-day, what you did, at the rink, away from the rink, and everything else. So, I think that's, was around the time that I started to, you start to feel like you kind of have it figured out. And it was really, really enjoyable, and even at my last years of my career, I wish, as you say, like it was just at the point where you're like, I honestly thought that, and it's myself trying to fool myself, but I honestly thought I was still getting better when I was my last years, even as I was approaching 40, just because you just feel like you're able to not outthink the game, but you got a control of over the different aspects of it. And so, and being able to kind of impart that on some of the other guys that you played with was, one of the most rewarding things. And so I think that's, part of the reason why you kind of evolve into a coach, because you feel like you can help guys out.
So there's a lot of people out there that want to be professional hockey players or take their career to the furthest extent that it can. What I've seen as a coach is what's really lacking is off the ice and away from the rink. I'm curious from your standpoint, you've been to the highest level. You've played in the NHL. You've won a lot of championships. You've been scoring leaders in many places. What are people missing or misunderstanding about what it takes to play at those levels? And I'm assuming it has a lot less to do with on the ice and on the practice surface and during games, and a lot more to do with off the ice, in the gym, away from the rink, etc. I'm curious from your standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest realization is that, and when you see guys that play a long time or guys that are able to play, like, it's just what they do, and it's a holistic approach to everything they do that enables them to play as well as they do, or to be able to be consistent. So, a lot of guys will, and I was guilty of this as a younger player. You're like, okay, I'm really going to focus on strength and conditioning, and I'm going to eat really well, and I'm going to be, diligent with everything for these, 3 or 4 months, because I really want to make this team next year. And so it's almost framed as a sacrifice, as opposed to just being like, what, this is what I do. Like, in my free time is, I enjoy, insert X here, but this will enable me to be good on the ice, or this will enable me, the fact that my sleep schedule is what it is, but that's just who I am. That's just a part of what I am. And that just contributes to being able to, to do my quote unquote job. And I think that's where guys get it wrong, is that they see it as a sacrifice, as opposed to just being, having all the different pieces that come together that enable them to be a good hockey player. So whether it's, being consistent with your diet, or being consistent with your sleep schedule, or being consistent with, your mental health as far as, meditation, or, being, having healthy relationships. Like you as I say, the best players are the ones, and the ones that are able to be consistent are the ones that have this holistic approach, and to be able to just be, yeah, that's who I am. And it's not, and it's not that, I trained really hard this summer, so I'm a great player. No, it's like, that's just what, like, I'm going to do something active every day, because that's just as a person, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go, I need to move every day. So whether that's going for a walk, or whether that's playing tennis, or whether that's playing golf, or whether that's, riding mountain bike, or whatever that is. But, I'm not doing that because I'm a hockey player. I'm doing that because that's just me living my life. And that's, and as I say, that to me is the big realization. Because what happens is, from my perspective, is that, like, guys get burnt, and guys will, they'll be like, okay, I'm not going to do, whatever this is. I really enjoy this, but I'm just going to focus for this amount of time, and then, there'll be this payoff. And so it becomes hard mentally when you have that mindset, when you kind of, avoid certain things. So again, I think that, for my side of things, it's, it takes a while to get to that, right? To be able to have the, maybe it's maturity to be able to say, okay, yeah, this, I enjoy getting, 9 hours, because I feel 9 hours of sleep, because I feel that I can do what I need to do during the day. And, hockey just happens to be one of those things. I enjoy being, I know that I need to stay hydrated just as, just to feel good as, my day to day, not because I'm doing it because, I have to, have a game, or I've got a healthy relationship with, my girlfriend or family, and as I say, like, there's all these different components ultimately will they'll draw energy, or they'll be able to help you sustain energy. And I think that's where it ends up being, difficult for guys, because they'll won't want to deal. They'll push it to a side. They've got a toxic relationship with with PlayStation, right? And they'll push, they'll push it aside, and they'll be like, oh, I'm not gonna do that. But then they need to, the biggest thing is having to deal with, whether it's PlayStation or a girlfriend, or whether it's, kids going to school or whatever it is, and trying to find what works best for the individual is, it's, you've got to be, a student of yourself, and to have the maturity to be able to do those kinds of things, and to be able to figure that out. Because, like, I could sit here and lecture, any of my kids and say, you need to do this, this, and this. Well, maybe that's not the right formula for said individual. So, getting guys to kind of come to that realization is hard and difficult, but, I think that's part of the job as a coach.
It's super valuable. And as you were talking about that, it was reminding me one of the favorite pieces I actually wrote of the Hockey IQ newsletter. And it was relatively early, so I'm not sure many people remember, but basically it was around New Year's, and there's always these New Year's resolutions and these big overarching goals. And I forget when it happened for me. It might've been early college. It's like shifting from a goal mindset to what I call a theme mindset, where you're thinking about themes, like, rather than the goal of I'm going to lose weight, just your theme for that year is I'm a healthy person. So then all of these micro decisions that you're eventually making lead towards the goal. Yes. But that goal isn't there when that devil's saying, oh man, do I really want to go for a walk today? Well, when your mindset starts to become like, no, I'm a healthy person walks.
Yeah.
Like, that was huge for me, like absolutely massive, to like change my entire life easily, going from like that goal mindset to that theme mindset. And as you're talking there, it was so clear to me of like, that's kind of what you're doing, is you're finding like ways to be, one, more comfortable in your skin, but two, create yourself an identity that isn't so much around the goals that you want to achieve, whether it be a hockey player or others, but just like, how do you want to live life and live life healthy?
Yeah. And that's a great point. I think, to only identify, and hey, being a hockey player is unbelievable. Like, it's outstanding, and you put a lot of, time and effort and sacrifice into becoming that, and everybody around you kind of does that. But I think you owe it to yourself to, as I say, that just to take the, the big picture approach, like see the forest for the trees. And again, there's stresses within the game. The game could be stressful, especially, and again, having gone through it, like, you miss an empty net, and team loses the game, or you're, and now all of a sudden all you can think about is the empty net that you missed, and it wears on you. To be able to, unplug, or be able to have a bigger picture perspective on, on how you approach things is definitely beneficial, and it enables you not to, just to be in a better space mentally, and to be able to, to be present for the 60 minutes, as opposed to constantly, and it wears you out. Like, if it's constantly on your mind, then when you eventually get to the times that matter, like, you're just ground to a nub, right? Like, you're to a fine powder. And that's, I experienced that in my career. There'd be times when, you just had nothing left. And it was, you wanted it more than anything, but you just thought about it 24/7. Your relationship suffered, everything around it suffered. You couldn't sleep because you were so, anxious of, wanting to do well. And so it can wear on you. So you definitely, the earlier you figure out the big picture perspective and worrying about all the, like you said, the theme based, the better off. And and the reality is that you have a window which you play, right? And then you got to realize, like, that window lasts only so long. So to be able to, have that mentality and that perspective is going to help you when you're on the other side of it as well. And that's the thing, you don't, and it goes by in a flash and players don't realize it. But it's also beneficial for guys when they're done playing as well.
All roads lead to adult league. I'm pretty sure Chris Chelios played past 50, and I think he's also in adult league these days. So that's absolutely the truth. So that kind of leads me into my next point of, like, as you shifted to that mindset, it probably came from hard times, and failure isn't the worst thing. And it's actually probably the most positive thing. When I think back on my life and I talk to other people, like, failure was the most important thing for them to go through. And I'm curious, in your probably playing career and coaching career, how did failure shape you? And then also, this might be similar, so I'll just kind of ask both questions at the same time. What was it like to kind of yo-yo from being like the best AHL or the top scoring AHLer and getting some time in the NHL, but not quite sticking? And then you kind of stuck around for a few years and you're starting the yo-yo a little bit again. How was that mental frame? How are you shifting? How are you dealing with all of these things?
Yeah. That was, and that, having gone through that, and as you say, like, I didn't have the, the tools, at the time to be able to deal with it, effectively, to be honest with you, because it was, having, and you hear it all the time. You've got guys, once they get in and they're playing, you get into a groove, and you don't even think about playing, you just go play. And so, you get opportunity, and you understand, you realize you're getting that opportunity, and it doesn't go well. So then you start to squeeze it a little bit more, but full well, for you to be effective, like, you just have to go play, and you just have to. And so again, it's getting to the point and figuring out what's important, for you in regards to your overall health and well-being. And I had to come to, a realization that at one point, it's like, I'll put in all the time and the effort and everything else, but, like, I really enjoy playing the game. And that's what ultimately it came down to, as far as me going over to play in Europe, because it was like, I want to be, playing, whether it was 7 minutes or 8 minutes, it was really, really hard to handle and to deal with. And it was way harder playing 7 minutes than it was playing, 20 minutes. And so at one point I just, like, what, it doesn't so much matter to me where it is, but, I want to be able to feel like, you're contributing and being a part of it, and being, that, and so that's ended up being why, I ended up leaving, is because, one, I was, never going to be anything more than, a depth guy, and, and that was fine. But as I say, it just, and I started to get some injuries and concussions and those kinds of things. But I don't think any of that would have mattered if you're kind of playing, but you're just kind of like, what, I enjoy playing. I want to be, a part of it on a daily basis. And you love playing, you love making plays, you love doing all those kinds of things, and you want to be playing on the ice. And that's ultimately, what led me to go play in Europe. And then, playing in Switzerland, there is a whole other set of pressures because there's a small amount of imports. And then you get, you play, they allow 4 imports, but then they would have 8 imports. So now you went from something where you understand the dynamic, of why you're in or why you're out, to something that's totally out of your control. And now it's like, well, we need a goalie today that's going to play, and we need a defenseman because we have no defenseman. So you 6 forwards are going to fight it out for these 2 spots. And so now, like, at that point, you're like, okay, I've really got to deal with my own mental health here, like, and just try to take a step back and worry about my own health to be able to, to be effective when I'm eventually in. So, as I say, for me, it's, I wish I had learned those lessons earlier when I was, in the, starting to get opportunity in the AHL, to be able to kind of take a step back and not to get so caught up in all the minutia and everything that goes on. And it's so true. Just worry about what you can control, because, but as I say, that ends up being really hard thing to do for a young guy. And it was tough because your family doesn't necessarily know about it, what to do. They haven't been through it. And the other guys on the team don't want to hear about it either. And so, I'm sorry, what was the first thing that you had asked?
The first thing was around failure, the positive impact of failure, and how that shapes us to be better. And you're leading straight into it, so you're right on.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing too. Like, the one thing I realized, right away was that you love to win, and you start to figure out, like, we had been to the final a couple times in the American League, and as any American League team, your only existence is the only reason for your existence is to just supply for the big team. So we would have our better players taken all the time, so you'd build through a year. And so they're going over to Europe, like you're those are your players that are there, and that's your team. And that was the one refreshing thing about that. But what I realized is, as I got probably second half of my career, even a little bit earlier, is that, like, the goal to win as a team is what really drove me. Because earlier in my career, I'd done well statistically, but there was always a void there, right? Like, there was always something that was missing. Like, those years we had lost in the final in Rochester a couple of years, and then my last year in North America, we had lost in the semifinal, and that was really, really hard to take. We had a really, really good team, but there was, like, lessons to learn, and with every time, with every heartbreaking loss, you always got one step closer to kind of figuring out what it meant, and what it meant, and how you were going to win. And it was, you're able to reflect when you were younger and the reasons why you didn't win. And it was clear, but, to be able to understand this, the sacrifice that each other player has to make within their role or whatever it was, for to be able to enable the team to win, was so crucial to me, and just my overall, like, view of the game. And it changed, and it really did change, the mindset, because the only thing that mattered to me was being able to win. And how are you going to get everyone on the same page to be able to to feel that same way, because every team's probably similar, where you've got guys that are worried about their own stat line because they've got contracts coming up or whatever it is. So just that challenge to be able to get guys on the same page. And I had some great guys over in North America as well. With Edmonton, there was some of those guys that had been around and had won those cups, to see just the camaraderie and the things that they did, the small things that they did, to be able to have that tight group. You could see why they were, why those teams were successful. So, some of the, and again, like, it was tough to see in the moment, why you failed, but, having not gone through those, those disappointments wouldn't have led me to be able to, to have the success with the teams later on, and then to be able to kind of, try to guide some of the players that I've coached, because you can see them going down the wrong path in regards to what things they're valuing. Because at the end of the day, it's about making yourself as attractive as you can to be able to get up to the next level. And guys don't necessarily understand that there's all the intangibles that enable them to be desired and wanted to move up. And because I was the same. Hey, if I get all these points, if I do these things individually, well, then they have no choice. But the reality is that it's all those, and it's this cliche, like it's how much better are you making the people around you, and how are you in that group setting to enable to make the group better. And those are the things that really stand out to me as were hard lessons, and I'm glad that I was able to figure that out. Some guys don't, and they bounce around all over, and they don't understand why. But yeah, it's the hard. It doesn't matter what league you're in. It's so difficult to win. And I think the guys that have understand that, and it's a lot of it is cliche, and that's the challenge now as a coach, is trying to get guys to understand that that's ultimately, they'll get their individual success, but trying to get them to understand, what that means to be able to be, a part of a team that wins, a part of a team that's successful in that way.
Yes, it's hard to get players to understand that you're actually going to be better off by getting less points or less accolades, or just like switching the mindset for that guy who made a bad pass to, okay, how can I be in a better supportive position? Like for me, it's rather than complaining about bad passes, okay, like how can I be the first person you see when you pick your eyes up? Or like, how do I worry about my puck acquisition habits that allow me success? Or, learning from failure in a good standpoint, because there's all of these self-defeating behaviors out there that players and people have in life, in sport, that just tank them in the wrong direction. And as you said, they never figured out. I'm curious, just for maybe a quick example, and then I've got a few more questions for you. What were maybe a few of those little things that you picked up in Edmonton from the group that had won the cup?
Yeah, the one thing that really stood out, and like, we would have lunch together every day. Like, and I know it's a small thing, and everybody would take a turn, buying lunch. And there was guy, and that might not sound like a big deal, but but they probably, now it's a little bit different. Obviously, they have the team provides lunch for them and everything else. But like literally every guy stayed and hung out and ate together. And it doesn't sound like a big deal, but the veteran guys are the guys that had been around there for a bit. If you were quick to leave and quick out, like they'd give it to you a little bit, and not in a bad way, but it was, you almost like you didn't want to take the ribbing, so you're like, okay, I'm going to stick around. And it ended up being, such a fun time. And then we would go on the road, and everybody would eat together, right? And there would be the odd guy that would kind of, I want to do my own thing, but like they just, and again, like I talked to some of the guys that had, played on that team, and they're like, yeah, no, it's different now. Right. But you could see like they genuinely cared about one another off the ice, and they wanted to hang out with each other on the ice. And again, we were young. There was a couple guys that were married and had some younger kids, and maybe the dynamic changes as you get older. I know, like with, when you have kids and everything else, you've got things that they have to do. But, that was the one thing that, like, I don't know that I had that in too many other teams that I played with. And, it was before the cap. And we made the playoffs. Like I was there for a couple of years. We made the playoff the one year, and the second year we missed by a point. And a couple of years later they went to the final. And so as I say, like that, it sounds like a small thing, but it was really relevant, just in the way that everybody got along. And again, you look back and everybody has, there's some characters and some different guys, but the older guys were really, really good at having those guys being included, and whether they pulled them in and were able to, smooth the waters a little bit, or be able to, have them be a part of it. And they went out of their way to make sure that was the case. That was one. I think, I think that was the big thing. And it kind of, it touched and,
well, it brings that team together. And it kind of reminds me of Willie McGinnis in New England with the Patriots.
Yeah.
You talk to Belichick, you talk to Brady, you talk to a lot of other guys. And I've seen the interviews around the dynasty, that early dynasty. And they're like, yeah, it was all Willie McGinnis. He was the first guy you saw when you came in the locker room. He was the last guy you saw out, because his door or his stall was right next to the door. And he would do the exact same things you talked about. He'd give you a little ribbon like, hey, you going to go do a little workout? I noticed you weren't in there this morning. And you'd always feel terrible, and you'd go in, and he like policed all of these guys like a young Brady to do the right things at a young age. And they had all of that success. And every time now they talk about it, Brady, Welker, Belichick. And I would suggest some people go and look this up. You can look up a Football Life. The NFL has done a great job of doing this, even on YouTube, and look up Willie McGinnis, and how he did that, not only for some teammates, but some childhood friends. He grew up some very rough places in Southern California, and had to go through some terrible times. And it happened to him at an early age. And then he eventually passed it on, and was kind of like that policeman, making sure that we're having this camaraderie and all doing the right thing. So I really enjoy that. It gets to the point where you've got ownership of the team, not so much with the coaches, but with the players. And I think that is what we ultimately all want to get to, is because at the end of the day, as coaches, we can't play anymore. As much as we want to, we can't go out there. So I know for a fact that you had an enlightening experience with this through video coaching, like video sessions with your pro players. And I'd love for you to share maybe how that came about and how empowering that was and how cool it was, because I think it's absolutely vital. And whenever I run a team next, this is exactly what I'm doing. I'm going to break them up into study groups, and we're all going to do this.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was, and again, I think it's a part of the, you evolve, and as I say, I mentioned to you earlier, you kind of, there's no blueprint in how to coach. For me, you've had coaches along the way, and you've certain things they did and that you liked and that they didn't. And so, for us, for me, when it started, everybody has their specialty. I was, I was in power play, and, we get our video, and then we show it to the group. We have our time that we show it, and, you go on, nobody really says anything, and you kind of go on your way. And one of the guys that we had after one of the years, I had a pretty good relationship with him, and he was just honest. He said, you know what? He said, the only thing that I really look for when we're doing the group video session is that I'm not on it, that, I'm not being the one that you're pointing out. And when I realize that, I just take a deep breath. I'm like, perfect. That's great. And so I would go. And so, hearing that at the end of one year, and then I thought to myself, as I got better at presenting, and I'm still not where I'd like to be, but when the other coaches were presenting, I put myself where the players were. And I think we all kind of did it on our staff a little bit. And they're presenting, and I'm watching the video as it goes by, and you want it to be quick, right? Like, that's the one thing, like, the attention spans aren't long. And as I'm watching it, I'm in my head, I'm like, I'm not like, that's flashing by. Yeah, I've watched these clips probably way more than the players are, and I'm having a hard time kind of seeing what's going on. And so then, as a staff, we thought, okay, well, let's grab 4 or 5 clips. We'll split the guys up into groups, and you make sure that you have a leader in a group. Make sure the dynamic of your group, that you have guys that are going to kind of take the lead, if you will. And then we'll put guys in different parts of the rink, different rooms, and then the coaches will run the video, and then the players, will ask the players, like, what do you see, or what are we trying, like, what can you tell me from this clip? And so we did that with the 4 or 5 clips, and it was like the amount of engagement within the clip or within the session was like, it was phenomenal. And they started debating the clip amongst themselves, right? Well, he can be here, or this guy can be over top of his check, and he's not tracking back, and whatever it was. And so at the end of the year, when we did our year in review, that video session was brought up. They're like, you know what, that the time we did that video session where we broke it up, and like, that was great. We got to do more of that. Right. And so I think that's, and so that, from my side, and you can't always, there's information that you want to bring across to your players, and if you do a pre-scout, or you're looking at the game, and it can't always be that, I don't think, especially at the pro level, because you want to go through, or you want to go quickly sometimes, and you want to get some information and to the players. But I definitely think that changed for me, how I did my individual video sessions. Instead of showing somebody, the clip, well, this is you not getting the puck out, or this is you, not seeing, the open side of the ice, or not jumping, whatever it might be, just to be able to get the engagement of the players. And because it's for me, it's players, I think at one point I could see that they were dreading the clips, because they're like, okay, here's 12 clips that are things that I'm doing wrong. Whereas you call them in, and, especially in power play, I'd be like, okay, well, like, what are you thinking here? And then you just have the conversation. Well, I'm coming off the half wall. I'm looking for the bumper in the middle to give me a shot pass option. And, it's not there. So I'm kind of stuck. And so now I'm figuring out, so then it evolves to another part of conversation. And so, that for me, having gone through that has really, really changed the way, that I saw it. and with my team now, we don't have the chance to do too much video, but definitely try to get their view on it. And then the kids are younger, obviously it's high school, so they're not as polished, but I definitely think that's, to me, that's kind of the way that you need to go about it.
Yeah, and I really like the player involvement, because you're now asking players to come up with solutions, and those solutions will definitely work for them, because I've never seen a kid be like, oh, I'm just going to skate faster. And it's like they're the slowest kid on the team. Like they understand their skill set enough, and they're trying to find solutions within their own skill set rather than doing what we think they can do, but maybe they don't feel like they quite can get there. But yeah, that's fascinating. The last question I want to bring up here revolves around women's hockey, and being the man of the house surrounded by nothing but females. I feel like you've got an unbelievable front seat view to this. Plus, you had two sisters as well, so this isn't a new situation for you. And you were telling me earlier how you knew Haley Wickenheiser, who was probably the greatest female hockey player of all time. So maybe just give some. I'm just going to leave it open-ended, wherever you want to take this, because you've had a way better view than I have.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no, I mean, Haley, when my sisters were younger, they played with Haley, obviously. Haley, did everything, and still continuing to break barriers as far as within the men's game. So, I have three girls that play, and they started living in California. They, looking for, wanted them to play. I took so much out of the game, wanted them to play. Obviously, I had sisters that played as well, and they ended up playing on provincial teams, and saw the challenges at that time going through. And even with Haley, like, she'd come out and skate with the guys, with pros, and she could, definitely keep up. But just, the attitude of some of the guys towards her, that's why I saw the challenges of girls and women playing the game. And now seeing my daughters, playing and coached by, guys that, by dads that don't necessarily have girls, and not knowing how to, how to manage them and to coach them. And, so, now, having the opportunity now to coach them and to see, how they best respond, and how they, how they see the game. It's been, it's been eye-opening, to say the least. I think their ability to stay on point, like, it's, with the girls, you tell them, you got to be, and again, it's been said so often, but you got to be careful how much, or how structured of what you give them is, because they love the, and I can speak for my own girls, they love the structure. Like, I've had my own daughter say to me in games, like, I don't know where to go. Like, she'll, and when she was playing, with the boys, like, I just want to know where to go. And so, and I think a lot of times, and I know with the case with my oldest one, she just wanted to quote unquote fit in, and just not be made an example of. So, getting them to play, and they won, state championship with the boys, and she was on the team, and contributed, but she would always defer. And so, I would, and in my head, I would say, I don't know how great her hockey sense is, because she would literally get it and literally just look to defer and to give and to move it. So now having them play on a girls' team, to get them to understand that they need to just assess the situation, and to be able to have an awareness, and that, like, they need to take, ownership of of time and space. So they need to recognize, okay, there's not a set play that you have to make. And so first of all, recognize when I get it, what's around, but then to be able to just adjust accordingly as it is. And it's so difficult for them to at least for my daughters to be free with that. And we're getting to the point where they're able to make the plays that are there, as opposed to having a preconceived idea of what the play is 5 seconds ago, right? They get the puck into the middle and then they're like, okay, I'm going to pass it to the winger that's breaking up the wall. I'm going to pass the winger. And the play is to skate up the ice because there's open ice in front of them. So, that to me, it's, the challenge for me, and I know is to be able to just to get them to read the situation that is there and to make that play accordingly. And as opposed to, the play that they thought that they, 5 seconds before, or the play that they should make. And again, for me in watching, girls hockey, it's really jumps off the page when you watch some girls to play that are actually just playing and they're making plays and they're coming up the ice and they're reading that, they don't like what's in front of them. And they're able to turn back and regroup. And I watched Cornell played the other day, and Colgate played the other day. And I was blown away by, just the plays. And what's that? Sorry.
We play free. Greg Fargo was on the podcast actually. And
yeah,
great guy first and foremost, but yeah, their whole phrase is we play free. And I was amazed because I've seen similar to you of there's almost this hesitancy. And I've always heard boys will always test the limit. Girls stay within the rules unless you have to give them permission to go further.
Yeah.
Pretty much that's kind of been the rule of thumb.
Yeah. And I didn't know that was their model. But yeah, that makes sense. I watched it. I was just like, oh, this is pretty cool, to watch. Right. And so I think that the challenge for me in coaching the girls is that, it's where's the line between giving them some, and again, giving them some structure to be able for them to use the spacing on the ice, and to giving them the freedom to kind of recognize where the ice is. It's a fine line between the two, and that's where I struggle with a little bit. And again, I have a girl at 12U, one at 14U, and one at 16U, and so the 14U typically is when they start to come over from the boys' side. Those that are good players with the boys tend to not know how to share the puck for the most part, and because they've had to do it for the most part by themselves. And so to try to get them to share the puck, to be able to it's been a fun challenge, but it's definitely, you can definitely give too much, I think, from my side of things, and have it over structured to the point where they're not making plays. They're looking, and again, watching now, playing some teams, I can tell within 30 seconds that team's going to go low to high, D to D, and crash net every single time in the offensive zone, right? It's just a given. So, we put somebody right in the middle of the blue line, and they'll almost literally pass it right on their tape and without even looking, right? To be able to, so, and it's a process, because, it makes you feel better as a coach to be able to have, at times, okay, they know exactly where they're going, and they're in the right, quote unquote, right spots, and their space and everything else, but they're not reacting to the play, and they're not creative to the point where they can make anything happen. So all over the map there. But that's in a, you know,
Women's hockey is definitely going in the right direction. And I love how Greg's approaching it and playing free and opening this up to the women being who they are and being able to express that. Because I think it's just so important. So I appreciate you sharing that. I'm curious from your sisters playing, what it was like to, were you the oldest? Were you the older brother or youngest one?
Yeah, I was the oldest. Yeah, I was the oldest. And, you know, they, as I say, they transitioned from ringette to hockey, you know, later, because there wasn't any girls. They would have had to, you know, when they were younger, they would have had to play with the boys because there were no girls teams. And, you know, they weren't big by any means. And so, you know, they you know, I think they enjoyed it. But I think it was really challenging. I know when they were 16, they had to play with, they had to play with women, right? Like they were 25, you know, 26. So it ended up being, you know, that's intimidating, right? When you're 14, 15, 16 years old and you're playing with, you know, women that are, you know, as I say, they're, you know, they're late, you know, they're not, you know, it's that there's a huge gap in maturity and just, you know, life experience and everything else. So I know that made it difficult, you know, for them. That's why you know, with Haley, everything that she had to go through and, you know, challenge, even, I mean, Haley played in men's leagues, right? Like that was, and I know in Switzerland, they wouldn't let her play in the B League, right? Like so it's amazing everything she did and has done and everything that she continues to do. And she's, you know, I think it's amazing as far as what she's been able to do.
True trailblazer. But no, this was a fantastic episode, and I know everyone's going to appreciate it. But I want to make sure I give you 2 minutes here at the end to talk about anything you want to talk about. Tell us what you're doing now and how amazing it is and what you're building it into, or anything you want to talk about. 2 minutes, floor is yours.
Yeah, no, thanks. Yeah, no, it's just, you know, we're building a program at, you know, St. Mary's in Stockton. You know, we've got girls program this year. We've got, you know, just an academy this year. Next year we're going to be having 16U team. You know, we've got housing and you know, everything that all the great makings of a great program. The school is, you know, private Catholic school, 140 years, and they, you know, they've had, you know, quite storied past with girls basketball. They've got, you know, top 25 in the country ranking, and in girls basketball. Baseball is, you know, they've got guys, Ed Sprague, and they've had, you know, 30 to 40 guys that have played in the majors. So I'm excited that the opportunity, you know, on the boys side, we're looking to have an 18U and a 16U team. And so, you know, it's a great opportunity to be in California and to be able to play, you know, some, you know, travel and play, whether it's in Apple or the Canadian Sports School League. So excited about it.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Domenic, for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Okay. No, thanks for having me.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode. I know I did. So before we let you go, though, we'd like to remind you to please like our podcast, subscribe to it, give us a follow, and share this with all the hockey people in your life. We really appreciate growing this community, this podcast. Remember, we also have a newsletter, the Hockey IQ newsletter as well. Really excited to continue to grow this. So please help us grow this further by liking, subscribing, following, and sharing with everyone. So appreciate you all. Take care.
That concludes this week's episode. Thanks for joining us here at Hockey IQ. If you haven't already, take a quick moment to hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, and drop a review. If you want to be a great teammate, even recommend us to a friend. You can follow us at Hockey's Arsenal on Twitter and Instagram. Check out the website, hockeysarsenal.com, where you can subscribe to the weekly newsletter. You won't regret it. Catch your buttes here next week for a brand new episode.